Hello, everyone. We will begin in a couple minutes just to make sure everybody is joining during this time. All right, in the interest of time, we are going to begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CSML Speaker Series, Women's Leadership in Tech. This is Dr. Leila Naderi. I'm the Director of Partnership Development at Alliant International University. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today and following us through CSML Speaker Series. I hope you and your loved ones are safe, healthy, and well. Before I announce the agenda, I wanted to share with you a study by the World Bank in 2020, and it's very relevant to the topic of this webinar. I was in an international leadership conference during the last 5 days, and this was a very a timely research that I'm reading also the foreword from the president of the World Bank. This study that has been done by World Bank, it's about women, business, and the law 2020. And the study tracked how the law affects women and at various stages in their lives, from the basics of transportation to the challenges of starting a job and getting a pension. This year's study showed that progress is being made with all the regions improving their average scores. Still, the results are uneven. High income countries tended to have the best scores, leaving women in many countries with only a fraction of the rights of men. That is not acceptable. Women should be as free as men to travel. They should be paid the same as men for work of equal value. They shouldn't face gender discrimination when applying for a loan or starting a business, and they should have the same rights to property and inheritance as men. And the research also clearly shows that reforms and policies that empower women boost economic growth. So there is a relation between that. And when women can move more freely, work outside the home, and manage assets, they are more likely to join the workforce and strengthen the economy. So with this research being shared with you, you see why we decided to have this topic for our webinar today. And it's part of who we are also as Alliant, being an inclusive institution that we are committed to serve the diverse groups of people. So for the agenda today, uh, 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 before I announce the agenda, I want to highlight that we are recording this webinar, and the recording will be shared with you. So you could feel free to share with your network. You could also have the opportunity to submit your questions via Q&A box or chat box, and your question will be responded after our speaker will deliver her speech. So for the agenda today, Dean Rachna Kumar will begin with a brief introduction to Alliant International University and California School of Management and Leadership. She will introduce our speaker, Chelsea Kaufman, co-founder and CEO of Learn Academy. And Chelsea will talk about why women should most certainly be an integral part of the innovation economy, and how organizations are part of the solution for women in tech gap problem. So after that, we will have Q&A, and you could share your questions, and we will wrap up the session with final notes and announcement. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dean Rachna Kumar.
Thank you, Dr. Naderi, and welcome to all our participants, as well as our speaker, Chelsea Kaufman. So I am Rachna Kumar. I am the Dean for the California School of Management and Technology, Management and Leadership in Alliant International University. I have been with the university for over 2 decades and came here after 2 other universities, but after New York University, which is where I completed my doctorate and my initial research. I have continued consulting and research in technology areas, in funding of new ventures, and technology-mediated teams. Next slide, please. I'll take a few minutes to tell you about the school and the university. So Alliant University, Alliant International University, has had more than 100 years of history. We have been accredited by WASC for a very long time, more than 3 decades. There are 5 schools. We are Management and Leadership, which is my school. There is School of Psychology, there is School of Forensics, Schools of Education, and San Francisco Law School. We have 5 schools and we have 6 California campuses. We also have an online campus with several of these programs. Within this management school, we have a strategy of programs which is managing tech and quant areas. So our programs, our curriculum feed that growth need in the market. And the webinar, the topic of the webinar today and the speaker is very aligned with this particular positioning and strategy, which says managing of tech and quant areas is where the education of bachelor's, master's, and doctoral levels are being focused on. We also, other than degree programs, we also have certificates. The advantage of certificates is that it allows students to do intensive preparation within a shorter time. And these graduate certificates, as well as undergraduate certificates, have credits that transfer to the degree. So you can do a 6-month program with certificates, 3 courses. And if you like to want to transfer it into a degree program, those certificates will still count. A word on the programs that we have. We have an MS in data analytics, an MS in information systems and technology, and an MS in healthcare analytics. Going with the theme of managing tech and quant areas, we have a BS in information systems and technology. Our DBA, Doctorate in Business Administration, has a specialization in information and data sciences. BS as well as MBA has concentration in IT and in digital marketing. And we have a PhD in leadership. So we have programs from bachelor's levels, master's level, and doctoral level. And we focus within the managing of tech and quant areas. Next slide, please. So I want to welcome our speaker, Chelsea Kaufman from the Learning Academy. We are honored to have you here. Not only is she a woman in tech area, she is a leader that has founded a very successful organization. So with that, Chelsea, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Let me pull up my slides. Great. Well, I want to start out by just thanking Alliant University for having me today, especially to speak on this topic that is really close to my heart, that I have been working for most of my career in helping women and other underprivileged communities really rise up in technology. And I am very thankful again for being able to speak to all of you on this topic. And again, I also want to just thank you. Thank you for coming and for learning and growing with us so that we can all continue to be better people and to continue to help lift each other up. And that's my hope for this talk here. I do want to encourage you that if you're interested in introducing yourself in the chat function, I always think it's a good idea to learn different ways that we can connect with each other in these virtual environments so that we can feel a little bit more connected. I can feel connected to you, and you can feel a little bit more connected to me. So if you want to take a minute to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us your name, maybe a company that you work for, or one of the degrees that you're working on. And lastly, share a female leader that has inspired you over the years. I'd love to see, all the different women that we have in our lives, whether they're ones that we know of or don't. It would be really exciting to kind of see that from you. So I'm really excited to start off this talk by telling you a little bit about myself. So I am a career transitioner. I have not always been in technology, and I don't have a technical background. I come from the nonprofit, really the nonprofit performing arts space. Started out in the theater and worked my way up into management, where I spent a lot of my time building communities and managing nonprofits and working in that space to really bring art to the forefront of a community. And I spent a lot of my years in that industry. But when I look back at my childhood, my dad was a senior systems analyst for the County of San Diego in the 80s and the 90s. He worked there for 25 years, and he helped them build a lot of the networks that they're still working on today. He started a side business where he was helping small businesses set up their computer networks. And I remember when I was young, I would go to these small businesses and help him run the cable. And he would crawl under the house and take the Ethernet cables and we would put them up through the holes and we would connect it all together. And it was such a cool thing to be a part of that with him. And I think back on that, and I do sometimes wonder why I didn't go into technology when I was younger, and why I decided to take this other route and go into the arts and go into education. And that I spent a lot of my early career in those fields. And don't get me wrong, my parents were so supportive of me. They were encouraging me to get my degree in theater, which could prove to be a difficult industry to be in, but they were really encouraging. But what's interesting is when I look back, I did not have the examples in my life of women in technology, women in leadership roles. When I think back to the people that I know that were in those positions of power, they were almost always men. And so as I have transitioned into this new career, I've made it a big part to be that example and to continue to try and lift people up. So 6 years ago, I started Learn Academy, and Learn is a workforce development institution. So we are helping people transition their careers into web development, doing a lot of the things that I did when I had to transition my career from the arts and nonprofit field into technology. And we're creating a community of people that want to learn and grow and be a part of that change. And a big part of that work was making sure that we were breaking down barriers for everyone so that more and more people felt like they could be a part of this, so that technology is made by and for people of all different types of backgrounds and perspectives, that making sure that at that table we have such a diverse group that technology is representative of the people that are using it. So we wanted to make sure we were breaking down a lot of those barriers. And the thing that I want to focus on today has a lot to do with what we need as leaders in order to encourage more women and other minority groups to go into technology and also to become the next leaders in our technology space. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what kind of culture we need in order to support that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the balance. And I'll go into more detail, but often I get people asking me about how I balance it all. I'm a mom with two very young children. I run my own company. I, have a life outside of work, and there's a lot of juggling. And so we talk a lot about that balance. And there's a reason that I think that it belongs in this talk. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But the last thing I want to talk about is also how you can get involved in starting to grow that career and continue in on your own leadership development. Because I want to make sure that you come away with this with those tangible actions that you can do so that you feel like you are making that same difference also. So let me go next. I want to let's start out by talking about what it is that we need in a culture to really bring up and empower women to feel like they can be leaders, and that more and more women can join this space. Because it's not just that we need more female leaders, we need more women entering the space so that they can grow, and so that we can have these leaders later on. That you're not going to see a big jump unless we start at that beginning. And what's encouraging to me is seeing what's happening in our elementary schools and how we're introducing technology even earlier, and that it is not a male-female choice, that it is something that as a collective, we're introducing this to everyone at an early age. And so in the hopes that later on we will have even more women in the space and even more leaders. So let's dive into this a little bit more. So let me start out with empathy. At the core, leadership is ultimately about others. Empathy is a leadership competency like no other skill that can bring a big difference when it comes to leadership. And empathy means being able to understand the needs of others. It means that you're aware of their feelings and what they are thinking, and being able to create that kind of environment. And not only if you are the one creating that space, but if you're the one entering into it. Both empathy is important in order for people to feel like they have a sense of belonging, and that will allow us to empower more people to succeed. So what does that look like in a workplace or in a classroom or in a group project or whatever it is that you're currently working on? We at Learn spend time checking in with each other on a daily and weekly basis. And we do it in really simple ways, both in our classroom and in the administration. We spend the morning doing a quick check-in. And sometimes we make it really simple of just like, how are you feeling today? And our students get an opportunity to say, man, I didn't sleep well last night, or I woke up late and I'm having a hard time focusing. That information allows us to understand, as that person goes on, how they're going to work throughout the day, and allows us to empathize with them and know how we can help support them. I often have to come in to our meetings and say that I am sleep deprived because my 9-month-old kept me up all night. Luckily for all of you, he did not last night. So hopefully I'm on point today. But most of mine, again, have to do with sleeping because I'm in that sleep deprived stage of parenting. But mostly, and most importantly, my team hears from me as a leader that sometimes I have hard days, and that's okay. And so we are then allowing for everyone on the team to be able to say when they have those hard days, and so that we can then support them. We can have the empathy because we understand, I know what it's like to have a hard day, and I know what I need when I have a hard day. And so knowing that my whole team has that also. And I think especially in the time of COVID, when we're spending a lot of time online and a lot of time communicating in a virtual space, at Learn, we have a mantra that we often use that we say, assume positive intent. So when somebody gives me that quick, like one line, I am assuming positive intent and not that they are casting any kind of judgment or anything negative about that. I'm going to assume that there's positive intent behind that. And that allows me to have empathy for them and them for me as well. And in creating that space, again, we're then able to empower, we're able to lift up, we're able to work together. We then create those leaders and we then support those leaders in our space also. And then I want to point towards examples. As I said in my story, I didn't have a lot of examples growing up. And that wasn't anyone's fault in my immediate family. That wasn't my parents' fault or aunts and uncles. It was a sign of the times that I didn't have that. I was not fortunate enough to be in that kind of environment. And to me, that is a challenge. And I think that we can look at that idea of examples in different ways. We can look at it from the big picture, right? This is a fortunate time to be giving this talk when we are just brought on our first female vice president, and that is an exciting example of a women in a leadership position. But then you can see it in really small examples also, that just in your own team, in your own organization, that there are examples of women in leadership positions. For me, as I was building Learn, it was really important that I was honest and open with my team about being a mom, that when I was pregnant, I was 9 months pregnant, giving a talk at San Diego Startup Week on technology, on how to get into the field, very pregnant belly at that time. But it was really important to me that everyone in that room, one, saw that a woman could be giving this speech at this time in her life, and that other women in the room could see an example of a woman doing something that maybe they'd want to do in their future. And so for me, then moving forward in my career, making sure that my space and my community was open to families, that we were open, that we were creating an environment that allowed families to participate in whatever means that meant to you as the participant. Again, lifting up, empowering people. The more we do that, the more women, the more minorities are going to enter into this field and are going to excel in that. And so as somebody who is in a leadership position now, it is important for me to make sure that I am encouraging that kind of behavior by giving that example for myself. And lastly, transparency. Transparency is one of my core values. It is one of the core values at Learn that I've worked at organizations that didn't have and didn't believe in transparency, that they felt like they had to hide the numbers, they had to hide the finances, that big decisions were made in closed doors. And in those kinds of environments, it doesn't allow for people to feel like they are a part of the process, that they are a part of something bigger. And so it makes for those stairs to get to a position of power even more blind, that you don't really know where you're going and you don't know how many steps are in front of you, because people are blocking information and keeping things to themselves. So I think that it's really important for organizations as my own, but also as a person. I am always an open book for my team members, for the community, that it's important to me that we are able to talk about both the good things and the bad things, the struggles, the challenges, the successes, the failures, so that we all can see that those are all a part of reality, and that you can stumble and you can fall and you can still lift yourself up and you can still succeed. And it's really important to me that we are able to share that with everyone, and that is an important part. Now, I want to move on to this idea of balance. And this is one of the things that people ask me about the most. How do you balance it all? You have small kids, you're running your business, there's a global pandemic. How are you doing all these things? And I try and be really honest with folks that there are days when it works and there are days when it does not. There are days when I am on my game at work and days when I am not. There are days when I am the best parent and days when I am not. There is no answer to end all answers. It is a daily juggling act. But one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this today goes back to the idea about talking about transparency. That as a leader in this space, I want people to know that I don't have it all together, so that you can see yourself in this spot, that when you struggle and you fall, you can see that you can lead and you can be a part of all this, even if you have those stumbling blocks. And that's why I want all of you to not second guess your ability to be where I am and to go even further. So I like to talk about things that I struggle with because I think that it's a kind of example of leadership that's really important to me. You can be a leader in this space. No one is perfect, no matter what happens on their Instagram, in social media. I'm not an influencer, but I find myself comparing myself to them often. In this land of COVID, I am not baking sourdough bread. I am not running a 5K. I'm not doing any kind of self-improvement. I don't have time. I am managing kids. I'm managing the business. I'm trying to just be happy and joyful in what's happening. And so but I think that it's the most important to talk about those things so that people can see, so that we can all feel like we can enter into these fields and we can excel in that space. And in that, it's important to me to talk about that balance because there are times when it works and times when it doesn't. And so when we're talking about balance, I'm going to break it down into 4 sections. Make it yours. No one else is going to have the same elements in their life to balance that you do. No one is going to be in the exact same spot at the exact same time with all those things. So you have to look at what it is that you have, find those things that work for you, and find a way for the word enough to be a positive word in your life. I am enough. Let that land for a minute. The word enough is something that I struggle with all the time. And I hope for you that we can find a time when we can say, I am enough. And that is a beautiful thing. So make it yours. Find the schedule, find the balance that works for you. You know, if you're a multitasker and you need lists, you got your digital lists, you got your notebooks, you got your whiteboards, whatever works for you. If you are a time blocker and you need to time block all your calendar out to the minute of the day, find that thing that works for you. The key is to pick something and try it out. The second thing is to listen closely. Listen to yourself. How does it affect you? How is it affecting you? How is it affecting the people around you? Thinking back to that environment that we're creating in order to lift everyone up, create more leaders, create a space for women in technology. Listen to the folks around you. Listen to yourself. Is this balance working? Is it working today? Is it working this hour or this minute? It's going to keep changing. But at this moment, is it working? Being vulnerable, so hard. And this is going to go back to this idea of being enough. That we are enough. Being able to ask for help is a strength. Having that support is a strength. That as a leader, one of the best things you can do is find very smart, very talented people and surround yourself with them, which means there's going to be times where you're going to feel like you're not the smartest person in the room. And that's not a bad thing. It's mean that you have created this environment that is going to excel, because that group of people is everyone's going to lift up. We're going to rise this tide together. But we have to be vulnerable in order to create that space. We have to be able to say that we need help, and we have to be able to say that I have failed and that this is what I'm going to do. This is what I've learned from that. Think about those great leaders that we talked about in the beginning that you shared with us. They're ones that probably have made mistakes, and not just made the mistakes, but have publicly learned from them and grown stronger and bigger for them. But you can't do that if you're not willing to be vulnerable in front of your community. And lastly, talking about adapting, being able to adapt, being prepared for change. You never know what is going to happen. And for goodness sakes, 2020 is the example of that. When you are balancing a lot of things, you never know what might change from right out from underneath you. And that sometimes you're going to try something out, new technique to manage your life or balance your life, and it's not going to work. You're going to listen, you're going to ask for help, and then you're going to adapt. We just keep trying and we just keep adapting. I remember when my daughter, who's now 3, was first born, my husband and I soon realized that something's going to happen. Maybe at night she's going to wake up a million times and we're going to be like, oh my God, why is she waking up? But until there was a pattern, we didn't really do anything. We didn't change anything. We wanted to be able to evaluate, to listen and figure out what's going on, and then shift and change with the facts. And so you got to try things. We got to put ourselves out there, being vulnerable, surrounding ourselves with smart, passionate people, and then changing and shifting as life throws us on different curveballs. That when you're balancing your life, 1 hour it's going to work and maybe the next hour it doesn't. But because we've been able to create a space where we can adapt and change as we need to, that we're going to continue to succeed. We're going to continue to lift up in our career, lift up everyone around us. So I want to kind of wrap this up here at the end with some specific things about how you can get involved in technology, in the community, and start building that space of becoming those next leaders, because we have to start somewhere. And because with starting somewhere, we're going to continue to grow and change, and we will have more women in the space. We're going to continue to work for equality in the workplace. But we're not going to be able to do that if we don't have women entering in. And so in COVID world, there's some important things that we can be doing. A lot of that has to do with doing things like this, showing up to these webinars, showing up to meetups that are happening so you can continue to connect with people, be active on those chats, jump into the group community Slack channels so that you're a part of the conversation. Because as women, we need to be a part of the conversation, but we also need everyone else, men, to be a part of the conversation, because this isn't, as we've heard, is not a women's issue, that it is an issue for the industry. And so we have to work together to figure this out. And so joining conversations, going to these virtual meetups, being a part of the Slack communities that are really active right now. And it's kind of an exciting time because people are online more. There are more conversations and more discussions happening that allow for people to come in, share their thoughts, and observe in different ways, participating in those networking experiences so that you can have your voice heard, so that we can have more women at the table and have more men and advocates at the table as well. The other thing I want to point out is this idea of mentorship. And mentorship, it's this two-part thing. We have mentees and we have mentors. And I don't know about you, but it took me a long time before I realized that I was in a category where I could be a mentor, or I thought that I could be a mentor. But what I realized is that even a few years into my career, I could still have helped somebody who was just a year behind me, maybe even 2 months behind me, or even a peer. So I think that we need to look at this idea of mentorship as a way of just connecting with people, and that it's not, being a mentor is not defined by how many years of experience you have in the space, but by your experience in itself. And so you being somebody who is feeling experienced and has something to offer, that means that you can be that mentor to someone else who is going through maybe something similar, maybe something different. But mentorship, peer-to-peer mentorship, is really important as we're trying to get more and more women into this space. Whether you've been in technology for a year or 35 years, your experience is valuable and will only help to bring more and more women into this space. And lastly, the best way to connect with the community is to volunteer. I'm sure there's lots of opportunities at Alliant University to volunteer and be connected. It's the best way to get close to the people who are running the organization, to get connected there, and also connect with any attendees if you're working on some kind of event or community. I am also the managing director of San Diego Girls in Tech, and volunteering is how I got started in with that organization almost 4 years ago. And it's been a really wonderful experience to meet new women coming into the space, to be a place where people can lift each other up and to grow. And so before I close out and turn it over to you for any questions, I just want to wrap it up and say, as women, I hope that what we do in the technology industry is learn how to create environments where we can empower and encourage and lift up everyone in front of us, behind us, around us, in any sense that everyone has brings value to the table. And the more people we have there, the more powerful it's going to be, and the more it's going to look like the communities around us. And that I hope that we can all just find ways to connect with each other and to continue to grow in itself. So I'm going to reach out for some questions. I also want to leave this up just for a second. If you're interested in connecting, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. If you want to learn more about Learn Academy and our quest to bring more people into technology, you can check us out at learnacademy.org. So thank you again for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Wow, thank you, Chelsea. That was a great presentation, and everyone, those who know me closely, you know that I'm very passionate about leadership, but also the women in leadership. Not because I am a woman; it's because I think when it comes to empowering women and also empowering the half of the world population and also creating that gender equality is not the challenge of just a specific gender. It's something that we all as a society we need to look at it, and specifically we as women we need to take initiatives and uh, go for for the dreams, and also how we could contribute to the betterment of our society and also self-development. Thank you. That was great. Dr. Kumar, do you have any comment?
Absolutely. I think I loved hearing everything you had to say, Chelsea, and I love the fact that you brought so much of your personal story into the talk. I love several points of what you said, but I especially love the one about examples and role models growing up. And of course, you said we've just elected a vice president elect, a woman as a VP elect. Are there organizations that actually provide mentorship or mentorship, role models, it's kind of all mixed into one, for women or for women in tech? I'm more interested in women for tech because I know you bring that expertise and experience.
For sure. So there's a few organizations that we work with. Obviously, Girls in Tech is a wonderful. They're actually a global organization, so they have nonprofits chapters all over the world. But we do have a local chapter here, which is a great way to kind of connect with other women. Girls in Tech is definitely geared towards folks just entering the field. If you've been in tech for a while, there's another organization called Women Who Code, which is another great organization that supports, they specifically are supporting those junior and mid-level developers who are looking to kind of shift up their career. So that's a really great organization. There's also the Latina Geeks, which have, I believe, a chapter in Los Angeles and a chapter in San Diego that have really great programming as well for women getting into technology.
Good ones. I made a note, and we'll share it with the group and the larger community here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One question that comes to my mind, Chelsea, in terms of like, when you mentioned 6 years ago, you started, shifting your career basically, and also taking this risk of being an entrepreneur, beginning your business, co-founding the Learn Academy. When you think back to 5-6 years ago, did you envision your career as it is today? Mm-hmm. Was it something that you could envision?
For sure. So taking it even further back, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would not have told you that I was going to be in technology. That I have always been a part of organizations that are interested in communities and interested in education. And that's been a big part of it. But it wasn't until about 6 years ago when this opportunity presented itself that I realized that my experience was that I was always the person in the nonprofit that was in charge of the technology, even though I didn't actually have a technological background. They were always like, oh, you know how to, set up our network, or you know how to run or to edit our website. And so I just picked up on a bunch of these things on the side and didn't even realize that that was a whole industry that I could have gone into. And so at that point, I didn't think that this was going to be the path. Now, when we first started Learn, I remember when we first started, and one of our first milestones that we were looking for was that we were excited about a point when we had alumni who were engaging with the current classes as actively as we were. So if current students were posting questions, that alumni would then be able to go in and answer them. And that at that point, that was like the point that we've created a community of people that wanted to support each other. And about 9 months after our first program started was when we got that first question answered by an alumni. And I remember that point being so thrilled that we had achieved this first goal of creating that group and that people. And to me, that's what I feel like my career has been about, is creating communities and creating space for people to grow within their careers.
Oh, nice. Leila, you have a couple of interesting questions.
Would you like to share those questions, Dr. Kumar? Please go ahead if you want to.
Okay, so Hoyu Jian is asking, was there ever a role you applied for and landed, but you thought were not 100% qualified to do that role?
For sure.
Question, sorry. I missed half of the question. Oh, thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts. How did you proceed in that case?
Yes, so the company that I was with before I started Learn was a a nonprofit arts organization. And I was actually brought on as their managing director. And it was my first director level role. And I was terrified and definitely doubted myself repeatedly. And what was fortunate was that I seeked out people within the community and within that organization who wanted to help lift me up and saw that and really spent time with them in just learning. And I will go back to what I said in my talk, that transparency to me is so key, that I started this position in a place of being able to say that I don't know something and that that was okay. And that I created this environment for not just me, but for the whole team. And so I went in and they knew that that's what they were getting. And so I went in and asked a lot of questions and just kept trying to get better. And I made mistakes and had to own up to them and had to work through them. But because I had created that transparency, that it made all that easier. And so I do think that looking back on it, I was definitely ready. But when I was in it, I did not feel qualified at all.
Yeah, that was a good, thank you for sharing that. You have several questions, so I'll get to the questions right away. Renee Neert asks, regarding empowerment, what if a woman has experienced a great deal of negative influences in their life and has low self-esteem, which is a critical element in the success of any individual? How do they gain a better level of self-esteem?
That's a great question. I've given several talks on imposter syndrome, and that this feels very in line with that. And one of the things that we talk to our students about is, one, surrounding yourself with as many confidants as you can to help you through that you are going to enter into environments that you get to choose what you're letting yourself and going into. And so making sure that you're going into an environment, whether it's in a schooling environment or in a workplace, that is open to where you're at and where you want to go, that you're able to have open conversations with people. One of the biggest things that I talk about when we talk about imposter syndrome is that imposter syndrome is a feeling, just like any other feelings that we have. So if you're looking at how if you are feeling sad, or if you're feeling angry, that doesn't define who you are. And so if you're feeling self-doubt at that moment, that doesn't mean that you are that thing. And so to me, what's helpful is, I have the biggest, this is a huge topic, so I'm trying to narrow it down. But something that I think is really helpful is, you've probably heard of gratitude journals, where in the evening, maybe you write down 3 things that you are grateful for. Well, I tell my students every night, go write down 3 things that you are awesome about. Write down 3 things that were great today. So you can get used to talking to yourself in that positive way, so that self-talk that is telling you you're not good enough, that you don't have the experiences that you need, that you can start squashing that down. And the other thing to do is find that person that is going to be your cheerleader and that's going to lift you up, so that when you can recognize that you're feeling that self-doubt, that you can go to that person and say, I am feeling this right now. What do I do? And they can tell you how amazing you are, because sometimes that's all you need to hear.
So important. Very nice. Yes.
It is. And I think it quite a bit also, it's in alignment of that beautiful quote you shared from Brené Brown. Let go of who you think you are supposed to be and embrace who you are. I think in terms of we as women, we usually have that perfectionist kind of mentality. It's just sometimes embracing that I am enough. And I love the way in your presentation you highlighted that a couple of times, because I think that guides us to take one step at a time. I see another question from Saba Ozur. Women are more self-conscious about their qualifications. And we also know women do not see themselves in decision-making roles as much as men do. How can we change these mental barriers in women? And how can we overcome structural barriers, glass ceiling for women in tech industry? Really great question. It's just like,
that's amazing. I wish that I could tell you what the answer is. But I think that the start is helping more people get into the industry and creating these environments where we feel like we can thrive. So if there are women in organizations who are running organizations, and it's important for us to continue to lift up and empower the women around us, because that's the only way. We need more people, we need more women, and we need more men that are going to support this movement. So to me, it's about creating an environment where we're lifting each other up and we're supporting each other so that we can break down some of those barriers. And I think that, I mean, it goes, we can start when people are either entering the industry, making those hurdles smaller and smaller so that they feel good about that entry point, and continue to make those decisions in their path, because that will then allow them to become those decision makers, because they've been in an environment that allows them to do that. And so, for example, at my institute, I am always empowering any person on my team to be a decision maker, to take responsibility for their own role and their own tasks, and to make those decisions on their own, and to support that. And the only thing that I can say is that we have to just continue to do that, and we have to continue to create the space that allows for everyone to do that in the different ways. I had a really great conversation with a colleague this morning about the difference between introverts and extroverts in management. And I think it may not seem so, but I am a pretty intense introvert. That I think actually sometimes these Zoom webinars are made for people like me, because I feel like I am standing on my soapbox in the room by myself. But that seeing an introvert and creating a space so that kind of person can succeed, because their voice is just as valuable and their decision-making ability is just as important.
Thank you. Leila, do you have time for one last question?
I think so, yes. Please go ahead and read the last question.
Okay. Stella Shan asks, women historically shy away from STEM and quantitative subjects in school, and consequently also in workforce. As an educator, how do we encourage women transition into tech fields? What initiatives do you suggest?
So to me, it's about access, and it's about starting early enough that we aren't creating these barriers, that like technology is about certain things, that like you have to be good at math in order to be a programmer. That doesn't necessarily have to be true, that there's a whole industry there that has support for you. And so I think that what we've been able to do at our school is we've created easy entry points that people can start to learn about the industry. Not necessarily that they're learning the skills yet, but they're learning what the industry is like, that I think what's exciting to me is that our students are specifically studying web development, but at the end, they don't all necessarily become web developers, but they've been introduced to an entire industry with so much possibility. And so I think that taking that first step, doing webinars like this, doing, different types of events, I guess, in today's setting, that just breaks down those barriers so that people feel like they can be involved, and break it down, get rid of the jargon. We're not going to talk in code to you in the first, few sessions, really. We launched, I think it was earlier this year, a webinar that we call WTF is Coding, just for people that are like, what is that thing? I hear people talk about it, but I don't really know what it is. And so to me, it's about finding those things. And there are some really great organizations who are doing stuff like that, that with Girls in Tech, Women Who Code are always doing these events that are just break that down. So we're like, you can be a part of these conversations. And so we do a lot of target marketing to those kinds of groups that have maybe never heard of this industry before. And we're like, hey, here are the list of transferable skills that would make you really good in this industry. And so we look at those skills and say, how, if you have these things, you might want to look at this, and then break it down a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and just kind of do a slow roll of it, and making more and more entry points for people to join in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, wonderful. Really appreciate you, Chelsea. You know, if you look at even the chat box, actually, our participants, you know, they have actually shared like, thank you for the wonderful response. Thank you, Chelsea, for such an inspiring talk. So it's just like, and I want to say thank you also on behalf of Alliant and CSML team for joining us for such an inspiring talk. As Dean Kumar mentioned, it was, you know, we loved it because it was very relevant also to your own life story, and so how as a woman you rose to this occasion of becoming a leader within the tech and helping also women to thrive. And as you mentioned, in your presentation, in terms of having example, I think what we need actually more is just like having more role models and examples of women within this field. And thank you for being who you are, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Dean Kumar, do you have any final notes? And I want to also give space for final note to Chelsea, and then I will wrap up the session with a couple announcements.
Other than thank you, and really very much enjoyed the talk. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, and thank both of you for having me today, and for the audience for hanging out with us at a lunch hour. That I really appreciate just being able to share my story. That to me, again, that is the example that we need. That we just need people to be able to talk about their own experiences so that more people can relate and feel like they can do what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chelsea. We look forward to collaborating with you and Learn Academy in different level. And that's what we are actually moving forward through the CSML and Learn Academy to support our community through our programs and the programs that you are providing. So thank you for joining us. So for the final part of this webinar, I wanted to just wrap up with a couple of announcements. Just a second. So for those of you who are, if you have enjoyed this speaker series, specifically, I really enjoyed, when Chelsea shared her story, and also we try to bring experts, business and community leaders from different sectors through the CSML speaker series, so that you basically, get to know about different aspects of business, management, leadership, and how you can managing technology and data as well. So really excited to announce that for the next CSML speaker also, we have invited an amazing speaker who is an influencer and really globally recognized speaker. Nipun Mehta, founder of Service Space, is going to join us. Any of you who know him, you can Google his name, his TED Talks, and also what he's doing in terms of community engagement, community empowerment, social impact. It has been amazing. And I myself got to know about Service Space when I was doing my MBA. And any of you who know what I started through the Global Leadership Academy was quite a bit influence of knowing about Service Space and the power of volunteering. And in his talk on December 2nd at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, Nipun Mehta will talk about leadership, transforming leadership from transactional and relational framework. So I invite each and every one of you to mark your calendar and please join us for the next CSML speaker series. And you could, if you through the email follow-up, we will share the recording of this webinar with you, as well as also the link that you could register for the next CSML speaker. My colleague also from admissions just actually they shared with me that we have also CSML speaker bureau series. So during this bureau series, we invite our own faculty from CSML and Alliant International University to join their expertise. On November 12th, actually this Thursday, Dr. Qassam Hanna is going to talk about introduction to cybersecurity for business professionals at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So I encourage you to basically how you can find about this webinar. Please go to events.alliant.edu and you could browse all the wonderful educational webinars we have and you can register for that. So I hope you can also join for the November 12th Speaker Bureau series. With that being said, really appreciate each and every one of you joining our speaker series, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar on December 2nd. As I mentioned, Nipun Mehta will going to join us. If you have expressed interest in learning more about Alliant and CSML program during the registration process, we will definitely reach out to you and provide additional information. And I have added my contact information here. If you're interested in Alliant programs or partnership opportunity, please feel free to reach out. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Chelsea Kaufman for her wonderful presentation. Thank you to Dean Kumar for always supporting the CSML speaker series and also our CSML community. And thank you all for joining us. With that being said, have a wonderful day and hope to see you in our next webinar series. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.